Well, good morning and a warm welcome from us too. We are Michael Birking and Johan Jevoe. We're pleased to be here. The last couple of years, Acer and Intel have changed the way we go to market together. When we look at some of the significant changes that we have seen in our plans, we thought it would be well worth sharing some of our findings. On a quick note, yes, we see significant changes to how we go about our plans. But Michael, in conferences like this, it's often said loud and clear, everything is changing. So do you think everything is changing, Michael?
I don't know, Johan. When you and the Festival of Media asked me to participate in this, I was pretty nervous about it. As Roger quite rightly says, I've been around for 30 years. Actually, I've been around a lot longer than 30 years, but I've sort of been in business for 30 years, mainly on the agency side. I used to write speeches for one of my old bosses in an insurance company, and I remember coming across the line. Takes me back to the early 80s, where it's a famous Zsa Zsa Gabor statement when she got married for the 8th time, and she used to say, well, I know what to do, it's making it interesting that's the problem. And you've got 2 days of listening to people talking about content and how it's changing. And frankly, there's been so much written, you're changing a lot of it yourselves. It is actually quite hard to make it interesting. And it was interesting also just before coming up just now, I did a straw poll of the 10 people sitting around me, and 6 of you are on smartphones or tablets or doing something else whilst you're actually listening to Roger, who's a much better speaker than I certainly am. So it's a bit challenging to sort of make it interesting. So we've got about 15 minutes to try and say something. So let's get into it and see what we can say. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the millennials, who now represent 80 million of the 300 million population of the US. And recently, CAA, who own the Cassandra report, did some research which is actually interesting and I think sets the scene for a lot of what we're going to be talking about over the next couple of days. And there were 3 findings that we're going to focus on. The first one was this one, that of the survey, 70% of people said they would rather buy a cool experience than buy a cool product. I'm not quite sure I understand what this means. Maybe when I was an agency guy, I thought I knew what this means. Now I'm actually in the business of making devices. I really am not sure I know what it means. First of all, I think it's a question that's got the answer that it deserves. But I think the couple of points I want to focus on here is first that I think that you do get the answer that you asked for, but when you look at perhaps 2 of the brands that have changed the most dramatically over the last 20 years, let's take Apple with the iPod and Audi with the Quattro. They were both the creation of new brand experiences through the creation of a product. And I do think in all the work that we do, whether you're a media owner, whether you're an agency, whether you're a manufacturer, whatever it is, at the end of the day, when people go into this debate about, well, it's all about brand experience, actually it isn't. It's taken me a lot of years and a lot of experience to figure out that the reality is the 2 go absolutely inextricably hand in hand. Marketing can only be as good as the products which actually support it. The second point, Johan, would you like to say something?
Well,
about
I think, the interesting part is the second finding here is about 63% of consumers really want to be the first to share news and information. And, it really all started here. I don't know if you remember when the US Airways came down in New York. Yanis, who was just an ordinary consumer taking a picture on his phone and started tweeting about it. This is where it all started. And this is just a couple of years ago. And then on a side note, being a frequent traveler myself, here's why you should fly first. People in economy are on the wing hoping the plane would float. First class is having a glass of champagne with the captain. So here you go.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'll mentor that anyway. And then the third point that came from the Cassandra report recently is that this statistic that 47% want brands of people, of millennials, want brands to provide inspiration about things to do, make, or buy. So providing inspiration. As communicators of that inspiration, that sort of can come in a variety of forms. It's a little bit disappointing for me that we're having this event today rather than in 7 days' time, because we have at Acer a very big event on Friday where we're announcing a lot of new products, a lot of new communications, which I would love to share. But we have some very inventive ways in which we're actually demonstrating what products can actually do. But also, you have to create other emotional connections as well. And some of these really haven't changed. Here's one that we're going to be talking about through the course of this week. Or not. It's the new J.J. Abrams movie coming out in a couple of weeks that we've made a very significant investment in. And just for a very quick plug on behalf of Acer, there's an awful lot written about the PC and the death of the PC. Just so you know, we have a lot of tablets that we're launching, but we absolutely believe in the creation of new form factors for what creates the new PC environment and the need for productivity through those devices. But that's not the subject of today's presentation. Going back to my comment about 6 out of the 10 of us sitting down there doing other things while listening to Roger, I wasn't, by the way, Roger. I was completely focused on your brilliance. But this again is what we know. But millennials own an average of 2.4 internet-connected devices and switch attention between platforms an average of 27 times an hour. Do you want to have a chat about that, Johan?
Yeah, I think it's stunning to just think about the following. The finding we see is anything from a smartphone all the way up to what you used to call your desktop PC. All of that is fluid. The form factor, the usage, the interactivity between it, everything in the cloud, that is going to change around design, product development, and user interfaces the next couple of years. But think about it. Millennials change 27 times every hour the device they're on. We call that always on, always connected. And it's a huge opportunity to go from content all the way through to commerce. And I think that's where we sort of want to go next, Michael.
Well, I mean, again, some of the things that are changing. I mean, there's 3 sort of, so I'm pressing a button here and nothing's happening. Okay, try this one. Thank you. 3 things that I think are a little different, some markedly so. This one I think is a big change. In terms of building relationships as brand owners, I think building a direct relationship with your fans is an interesting way of putting it. Not your users, not your customers, not consumers, but your fans. This quote from Stephen Baumer, almost every week we come across a new video on YouTube that opens our eyes to a new area that we hadn't thought of. One has to recognize that people who are using your products or hopefully about to use your products have to become fans, because the dissemination of messages is altogether different from the way that it used to be in the analog world. So we think now not about consumers, not about customers, but about fans, or maybe stakeholders is another word. The creation of breakthrough authentic experiences. This can come in a lot of different ways. If you're a Red Bull, for example, you can send somebody up into the stratosphere and push them out of a machine with a parachute on and break the world record and get an unbelievable number of people watching the event. A fantastic piece of exposure that essentially is very much an extreme activity which supports their brand message. And then thirdly, the amplification of messages through advocates and influencers comes back to the fans' point. Everything about social media, social aggregation, listening, and the management of all your digital assets is all about the amplification of messaging, which is a very positive thing for people with less money today, as opposed to the major brand owners who could always afford just to do it in a more analog way. For every 2 paid views, many advertisers receive 1 free view as well, and that's before we even get into the subject that I dare say a lot of other talks are going to be talking about, which is the whole concept of paid media to owned media to earned media, which is a very important topic in and of itself. In the case of Acer, when we were looking a few months back to kickstart our new brand positioning of Explore Beyond Limits, we inevitably had to start with a piece of content. This is actually where we started.
Ultrabook, inspired by Intel.
Who's your supplier?
My what?
Where do you get your flour?
I don't know, dude. At the grocery store, bro.
Where's the icing?
Icing?
Icing for cupcakes.
Oh, it's right over there.
It's crazy out there.
What do you think of these?
They're not very me.
Really? What were you thinking? Couldn't we just search explosions on the internet?
No, Greg, the internet's not safe.
This is safer.
We made the light, powerful Aspire S5 Ultrabook, so we can all explore our hidden passions.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Greg, get me a cab.
For Mr. Kiefer Sutherland, that passion is a moist, fluffy cupcake.
Steady. Dynamite cupcakes. What do you think?
I don't know.
Greg. I wasn't asking your opinion.
Thank you, Michael. I think really piece of dynamic content that I don't think you will have seen in a world of unconnected devices. So, to the theme, is everything changing? Well, not everything is changing. I think that's significant to understand that when you look at the consumer landscape, when you look at the last 4 or so generations, we see the generation that is 64 plus and the ones that are younger than 26 actually having a bunch of similarities. And the one that stands out for us as communicators is actually that there's a cause that is greater than themselves. The 2 generations in the middle were a bunch of egoists. Michael and I belong in there, so just full transparency. But we see that changes both how people go to market as well as what they are paying attention to as they are looking to do their purchase. And when you go then onwards and you start thinking about the fundamental underlying principles of human interaction, always have been about entertainment, self-expression. Let's see if we can get this forward. Entertainment, self-expression, connection, knowledge, and commerce. That line from content all the way through to commerce is something we have been about since we were in the cave. The interesting part is it hasn't really changed that dynamically since then. I think we have a little clicker problem. Can we go one on, please? Thank you. As you see today, that town square mentality of purchase has just moved in a parallel universe to be in a very virtual space. And Michael, when you sort of look at that, we say everything is changing. Is that correct?
The slide's not changing when we press the button, Johan.
I know. Thank you.
Okay, this actually is something that Roger mentioned too. I mean, inevitably the answer is yes and no. The town square is still there, but it's very different. I mean, the first thing is that it doesn't even exist in the real world. I mean, it exists in the virtual world. So the online world means that just like trading floors used to exist on stock exchanges, in many places they don't exist anymore. The same is in the case of the town hall. They exist essentially in the ether, in the cloud. The second point is transparency. The we've become a much, much more transparent society. I mean, if you look downstairs when you walked in this morning, you know, the guts of the building are part of the architecture that you actually see. I mean, we have Richard Rogers to thank for that. Not ubiquitously, but certainly in a lot of places, a lot of virtue is made out of the way in which things are done. I mean, we take it now as quite normal to walk into a restaurant and see the kitchen. That would have been unthinkable 25 years ago, and you know, maybe trends come and go, but at the end of the day, fuller transparency is also there. But by far and away, the most important point, and the point that we'll leave you with today in the minute that we have left, is that differentiation is as much about doing things differently as it is about doing different things. One of my pet subjects is early Renaissance art and how things shifted from the Gothic world into the Renaissance, and that's, again, for another time. But at the end of the day, that was another good example of how paintings were still painted, but looked at from an entirely different perspective, from the perspective of man as opposed to the perspective of God. And in the world that we're in right now, when we go back to the comments that we made a few minutes ago about fans, essentially, it's the perspective of the fan that is absolutely critical to the creation of products, i.e. getting the right feedback from people to make sure that you improve your devices or your services and create new ones, but also in terms of getting the messaging out, in terms of what people are saying about you and disseminating it as fully as you possibly can through whatever social channels are available. The world, when we say, have things changed? The answer is, in the way that we actually want to create a product, a game-changing product, and actually then market it, no. But the way in which you get there, the perspective from which you look at everything, has to be different, and it has to be from the perspective of fans. And I think that is us right on the money. So thank you very much. I hope you have a great couple of days, and enjoy yourselves. Thank you.